start the recording. This morning, we are running this webinar. It's a very important. I'm very happy and honored to host this event because it's a new step in the life of the DigComp framework. It will be presented by Jude Cosgrove, who is currently a researcher in the digital education and skills team at the JRC's Unit T1 for the digital economy in Seville. And she works on digital skills analysis and policy, including DigComp. And previously, she was working in Ireland, where she has a master in psychology and a doctorate in education. Over the years, she has had various roles as project manager, analyst, policy advisor, and chief executive of the Educational Research Center in Dublin. She has worked on the theme of digital education and skills for the past 10 years, and she has been very actively involved recently also in the feasibility study of the European Digital Skills Certificate. So, Judith, thank you very much for presenting us this new step in the development of DigComp. Thank you, and the floor is to you.
Many thanks, Stefano. Can you hear me okay? How's my sound?
Perfectly.
It's good?
Yes.
Great. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. I would love if we were here in person, but online is the second best. I'm wearing a scarf this morning because I'm in Seville, but it's quite cold here this morning. And I'm really glad to see so many people joining. It's great to be here. So what I'll do is I'll go through the presentation to explain the next steps on DigComp. And in terms of questions, Stefano, how would you like to do this? Anybody can write in the chat, right?
Yes, please do that. Write in the chat. I keep an eye on it, and then maybe I will propose that we maybe stop every now and then to answer some questions, or we keep them all at the end. Depending on what comes.
Great. You can jump in. I'll pause every now and then, and if there are questions coming in, and there will also be time at the end for questions and discussion.
Of course.
So I'm just going to move to a screen where I have the presentation. So you might just confirm that the presentation is working okay. Do I go to the next page?
Yes, you're going to the next page.
It's okay. Great. So at the webinar this morning, I'll begin by talking briefly about the current context that's shaping the work on DigComp, and then explain our proposed plans for this is of the Joint Research Centre of the European Commission for the development work on DigComp during 2024 and 2025. And then very importantly, how interested individuals and organisations can contribute. I'll talk you through next steps, and then, as I said, there'll be time for questions and discussion. So I struggled a bit with this slide, the context, because there's so much is happening and there's so much that we could say about digital competences and what's happening because there's so much activity. But as you probably all know, DigComp, the framework was first published 10 years ago. So it's a 10-year anniversary this year already. We know it's very widely used across the EU and beyond. It's embedded in initiatives not only at international level, but also at national and regional levels. So just as an example, you probably have heard of the Digital Skills Index or the DSI. This is part of the Digital Economy and Society Index of Eurostat. It's developed by Eurostat. And this DSI measure is used to monitor progress towards the digital decade target of 80% or more of individuals with basic or above basic skills by 2030. And we also know from following all of the activities in the member states that DigComp is being used in at least 22 member states. DigComp 2.2, which was published last year, now includes something like 260 examples of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, and it has already been translated into several European languages, which is fantastic to see. And the DigComp hub of All Digital is supporting collaboration, exchange, and knowledge building to support efforts in this area. And I want to thank All Digital for hosting this webinar. We're very grateful. There's more that we can say about context as well. So, I mean, if we look at the existing research and policy, there's a report published in 2019 by the JRC that has found that, looking at various case studies, and that report has found that because of differences in how DigComp is interpreted, the way that it is operationalized in specific contexts also differs. Um, and there's another piece of information that we regard as quite very useful and important, is that the JRC was asked to do a thematic analysis of the structured dialogue on digital education and skills. Now, this dialogue was part of the Digital Education Action Plan, and it involved conversations with every member state. So each member state appointed a national coordinator who then identified the key people to take part in the structured dialogue. And there were meetings of some 5 or 6 hours with between the European Commission, which would have been Director General for Employment, Education. There was Connect as well, SecGen, and the Finance Directorate as well, all took part in these structured dialogues. And the JRC was asked to do a thematic analysis of the discussions. And one thing that came out of the analysis was that many member states are looking for more alignment and guidance on the use of DigComp. Also, Stefano already mentioned this other study. There's a feasibility study and a pilot have been taking place in connection with the European Digital Skills Certificate or quality label, which uses DigComp as its conceptual basis. And that study has involved consultation and including surveys of over 400 stakeholders across the EU. And in it, one of the key findings was there's a perceived need for better operational alignment on DigComp. And finally, you may know that it's in relation to the structured dialogue, which was one of the key inputs for the council recommendations on both digital skills and enabling factors for digital education and training. Those two council recommendations were adopted on, I think it was the 23rd of November. And the one on digital skills emphasizes the importance of consistent national and regional approach to the development of digital education and skills. And this includes a call to member states to strive for relevant and sound monitoring, evaluation and assessment of initiatives. So all of these things are pointing to a need for the European Commission to provide some guidance and support in this kind of theme of alignment, operationalization. So how do we do this? So what we propose to do to provide this guidance and support is to develop indicative learning outcomes which link together competence and proficiency. And this work is being done by the JRC in collaboration with the Director General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion. I might say here, like, what do we mean by learning outcomes? They're called different things. They could be called learning. Some people call them learning objectives or performance outcomes. They have different names, but what they mean is they are statements of what an individual should know, understand, and or be able to do at the end of a learning process. And that's a suggested definition from the Council recommendation on the European Qualifications Framework. There's a really good handbook that CEDIFOP has been working on learning outcomes for a number of years now, and there's a really good handbook which was updated last year. And they describe learning outcomes in terms of how they're used. They say they're commonly used to define the levels of qualifications, levels of qualifications frameworks, or they're used to orient curricula, to set qualification standards, to describe programs and define assessment specifications. And they also influence teaching methods, learning environments and assessment practices. I'm going to just shrink my screen a tiny bit. How's that? Is that better?
Yes, many people, Jude, are asking if you could shift to presentation mode, or if not, yes, probably because we were missing some of the lines at the bottom of the slides.
Apologies. Is that better now?
It's better in
We
the
were
sense that
test
now we see
driving.
the whole thing, but
Okay,
yes.
let's keep going. And if people, again, I can only see the screen. I'm the presentation screen. So Stefano, if people are having trouble or asking questions, please do stop me, and we can fix or answer questions. Okay, so let's have a look at this screen. How is this now?
It's, yeah, of course, it's a bit small, but it's inevitable. If we want the whole, either you, no, because we tried before, and there is a problem with shifting to presentation mode. So.
Yeah, I think it's because, do you know what it might be? It's because I have my second screen on. I'd need to shift rooms to fix it. I think if it's okay,
just go on with this.
Let's keep going. Okay.
Yes.
So, what are these learning outcomes? What will they be like? So, I mean, I don't know if you're like me, but whenever I read something in the abstract, I want a more concrete example. Like, what will these look like? Will these really be useful? How will they be used, and so on? So, what we're aiming for is that these learning outcomes will be available in 2025, and they'll have the following characteristics. These are what we're aiming to do. So the most important thing we think to emphasize is that they're indicative. So that means that their use is optional and of course can be adapted. We would like them to be comprehensive, to cover the whole framework, yet at an appropriate level of granularity, because if we go overly granular, we'll have too many learning outcomes and it will become overly complex or burdensome. So we need to get that balance right. We want them to act as a complement to and support for existing initiatives. We want, as I said before, to enable a link to be made between the competence or the content and the proficiency. We would like them to be structured in format, and I'll show you that in a moment. And I guess machine readable, so that in a way, if the JRC or commission output is the learning outcomes, this would then become an input for member states and other organizations to use in their own work. So having a structured format or a machine readable format, we think will help in that regard. We know that DigComp is used in various contexts, and the most obvious division is between formal education and outside of formal education. And we need the learning outcomes, the wording, and so on to be suited to the various contexts in which DigComp is applied. It's very important as well that we accompany the learning outcomes by guidelines that need to be short and clear, and examples of how they could be used. And we also need the learning outcomes to incorporate recent developments, because as we all know, this is a really fast moving area. So we need to incorporate recent developments such as generative AI. So I'll move on now and just show you what
Jude,
might they look like. Yes,
somebody
please.
suggesting if you could either hide the pop-up on the left or reduce it so that we get more.
That's a good suggestion. Let me see if I can do that. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my computer. It's so funny. I'm talking about digital competence and I can't present properly.
But that's typical. Don't worry.
Yeah, I can't. My
No.
mouse is, hang on, let me see.
Okay.
How is this now?
Better.
Is it better?
Yes.
Okay, so what might they look like now? I'm sure you can see on probably what you can see on the screen is quite a small table. So what I'll do is I'll just briefly talk you through it. So this is not necessarily what the learning outcomes will eventually look like. It's just to give an idea to make it a little more concrete for us. So how we see this organized, you'll notice the first thing is that in the output we're going to make all of the columns are filterable. So you can sort and filter and play around with the information in order that it's useful, because what we want to do is make the learning outcomes reflect the modular way in which they're sometimes used. So an example actually of this is yesterday we had a meeting with Iconos, which is a group in Spain, and they are developing profiles of different groups of workers. And what they want to do is to be able to match the assessment that they're developing to different profiles. And we think that having an outcome that can be filtered and sorted can help in this way. So what we will have is the first column, and again, in this hypothetical example, the first column will have the competence area, then the second will have the competence, and then there will be a place for each learning outcome, which will be a clear statement, which will have one verb. So the person can do something. Then each learning outcome will be classified as to whether it's knowledge, skill, or attitude. Then there will be a classification by proficiency level, indicated basic, I've just put basic, intermediate, advanced, highly specialized. It could also be the 8 levels, the more granular levels. I've also highlighted attitude here because this is one of the challenges that we are, I suppose, debating, and we will only know the result when we actually synthesize the information that is there. It could be the case that attitudes are transversal with respect to with respect to proficiency level, but that decision will be based on the synthesis of what is already there. In other cases, each knowledge and skill will be linked to a specific proficiency level. Then there are other aspects of the learning outcomes which are intended to be useful again in development. So for example, we might tag each learning outcome under themes. So there could be an AI tag, there could be a green tag, there could be a transversal tag. But again, it depends on what we're finding from the information that we get and the synthesis results. And we're also thinking that a keyword associated at the area level, the competence level, or even at the learning outcome statement level could be helpful. So again, why learning outcomes? So they're quite widely used, and I suppose anybody that's following the learning outcomes in general will know that there's been a general move in the direction of learning outcomes, which supports this lifelong learning perspective and competence-based approach to knowledge and skills and attitudes. Um, so we're hoping that the development of indicative learning outcomes can have both direct and indirect benefits. So directly, our aim is never ever to be prescriptive, but always to support what's the excellent work that is already happening, and hope that it can help to enhance the quality and alignment of content and approaches in teaching, learning, and assessment of digital competence. And we also hope that there will be an indirect benefit, which will ultimately lead to supporting that digital decade target that I mentioned earlier of at least 80%, or of 80% with at least basic digital skills by 2030. I'll pause now and see if there are any questions that have come in, Stefano.
No, not for the
No?
moment.
Okay, great. I'll keep going. I don't want to bore people too much. And then why should the JRC do this? Well, the JRC has overseen the development of DigComp over the past 10 years. Most recently, prior to me, the work was led by Rino Vorikari, and Stefano, who's also here, of course, had a key role to play as well. And I'm delighted that Rina's here this morning. The DigComp team, we have extensive experience in educational measurement and assessment, and we also have a high level awareness of how DigComp is used and what the needs of DigComp users are. But I'm very much looking forward to hearing some feedback and views in the discussion that we'll have after I stop talking. So I'll talk next briefly about the contributions that we're hoping that you all can make. So as I said earlier, we're already aware of several excellent initiatives which use DigComp to develop learning outcomes. And these have been done, we're aware of examples of initiatives of these learning outcomes, both inside and outside of formal education. So rather than start from scratch, the JRC would like to build on and synthesize the existing work. And so this morning, we're inviting you to submit documentation on DigComp learning outcomes. And of course, please share this information with any interested colleagues that you may know. Why is this important? Well, we believe that submissions from you or your colleagues, like the more we get, the more we'll be able to ensure that the resulting indicative learning outcomes and the guidelines and so on incorporate the ones already developed. So what kind of submissions are we hoping to receive? The first thing I'll say is we've opened a submission form, and what it contains, you can click on that link. As of now, the survey is open. So it contains a privacy statement. There's some basic content information. We ask for some details about the submission. For example, does it cover formal education, non-formal education? How is it developed, and so on. We're also asking people submitting whether they're interested in participating in a review. And then there's also the space to upload the documents. And the more information that you're able to include, the better. So we were welcoming submissions in any EU language, covering all of those different learning contexts, as I said before, and a various file formats, PDF, doc, Excel, and so on. However, if you have like a tabular list of learning outcomes and they are available in Excel or CSV format, we'd be really grateful to get them in that structured format. But any format is fine, as I said, PDF, doc, Excel, etc. And we're also welcoming submissions of related initiatives. So, for example, you may be aware of a curriculum reform initiative in your country that you really want us to hear about. So if that's the case, please provide us some information about that as well. Or there could be, for example, a very interesting initiative on digital upskilling for a particular group in your country or your region. And again, if you want, we would love to hear about that also. And there's room in this submission form also for that kind of information. Ideally, we're looking for submissions that cover 3, 4, or all 5 of the competence areas. We're looking for submissions in particular that provide us with this link of competence or content to proficiency. It doesn't matter whether the link is made at the 4 levels or at the more granular 8 levels, and not all proficiency levels need to be covered. So for example, we know that there are several initiatives there which cover up as far as advanced, but maybe don't cover highly specialized, and that's fine. We're very happy to receive them. And we would also prefer, if possible, and then this is just to do with the fact that things are changing so quickly in the digital space, for submissions based on either DigComp 1 or DigComp 2.2. And if you have any questions at all that occur to you after or at any stage, or even if you want to communicate to us on exciting things that are happening with regard to DigComp, please email us at the JRC DigComp email address that you see here. So how will we incorporate? So I suppose because DigComp has been around for 10 years and it's embedded already in so many initiatives, one thing that we want to avoid is disrupting what's already there. So how do we see this? We see this as an extension to what's already there. We don't see it replacing any existing element. And we do expect that the DigComp, the so-called conceptual reference model, so the part that has the 5 competence areas, 21 competences, and the proficiency levels, we think that will remain stable. So we see this as an extension rather than replacing anything that's there.
Judith.
Now, yes, please.
Sorry, there are 2 questions which, since we are on the topic, are relevant. One is by Mara Jakobsone from Latvia. She's asking, So we can submit also in Latvian language in Word format, since we have described learning outcomes for state employment agency, digital skills development programs according to DigComp in Latvia. This is an example. So would that be acceptable? And also,
Yes.
if submissions, this is Laura Eichbrecht, who asked, are submissions more closely based on DigComp.org and DigComp Edu also welcome? Interesting question.
That's a good question. So to the first one from our colleague in Latvia, yes, Latvian language is accepted and very welcome. What you've described, it would be very of great interest to us and very welcome. And from the colleague about the DigComp.org and DigComp Edu, the work that we're doing is primarily related to DigComp, which is the framework for citizens, while DigComp.org is the framework for organizations, educational organizations, and DigComp Edu is the framework for educators. So our main criterion there would be, provided that there is some coverage of the DigComp competences, we would welcome the submissions, even if they relate to DigComp.org or DigComp Edu. We do want to see the DigComp competencies reflected in the submission. Any other questions, Stefano?
No. Oh, wait, just a second.
Great.
Yep, no.
Great, many thanks. So I'll keep, this is challenges that we'll have to figure out together, because like it's really important to remember that my role is to follow the DigComp file and guide it. I don't have expertise in the areas under DigComp. I'm not a really, I know about digital skills, I know about policy and research and digital skills, but I'm not an expert. So this is very much going to be a collaborative approach. And we know, particularly from discussions with the European Digital Skills Certificate or Quality Label work, that there are some challenges ahead, and it's going to be exciting and challenging to figure these out in collaboration with many of you. So the first thing is we need to achieve the right level of granularity. We need to achieve the right, and I don't have the answers for any of these, by the way. We'll have to figure these out as we go. And I think when we get the submissions and start synthesizing them, some of the answers will appear, but others we'll have to consult quite widely on in order to come to a well-informed position. And even at that, we'll have to also provide flexibility in our guidelines, because DigComp certainly is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It needs to always be flexible because there's so many applications of it. So that's why the second point we think is important, that is achieving the right balance between clarity on one hand and flexibility on the other. We also need to establish whether it would be more useful to have the learning outcomes described at the 4 levels or 8 levels of proficiency. As I hinted earlier, we need to appropriately reflect knowledge and skills, but also the attitudes. And again, a lot of that learning, I guess, will emerge from the synthesis work that we do on what's already been developed by yourselves and other colleagues. And we need to achieve a good fit to the various learning contexts. And this is why the guidelines, again, will be consulting with you on how to make the most useful guidelines that we possibly can, because we'll have to ensure that the guidelines are useful in all contexts. And as well, there's this other piece which has come up in the European Digital Skills Certification study, which is, okay, we have the learning outcomes, how might they be translated into assessment? And those guidelines will need to reflect a range of options and current practices, because there are different ways of doing that, and there's no single right way of doing that. And finally, we need to ensure that the learning outcome format really is useful to enable this modular implementation idea that I talked about earlier. So those are some challenges ahead of us. It's going to be an exciting year. And I'm looking forward to working with many people on this. I can hear somebody in the background.
Somebody has a microphone on. Please switch off. I don't know. Okay, I found it.
Many thanks. So what are our next steps? So that link to that online form or online survey, that's going to stay open until the end of February. So there's plenty of time to make the submissions. Contact us if you have questions at the email address that I shared there. The email address is also included in the survey in case you need it. So as I said, we're going to receive a lot of information. We're going to undertake a review and synthesis of the information. Then the draft synthesis will be subject to expert review. The next step then will be to share the revised synthesis and draft guidelines to broad stakeholder review and consultation. And in those two steps above, the experts review and the stakeholder consultation, they're not only going to focus on content, we're not only going to be asking, are these good quality? Are they clear? Are they useful? We'll also be asking about the structure and design. So structurally, will this kind of structure work for you? Is a different design better? And also about the guidelines and examples. What should we include? What should we emphasize? What is a helpful way of presenting? So we'll be consulting on various aspects of this work, and we'll provide updates on the project quite regularly through the DigComp community of practice and elsewhere. So those are the next steps. And I'm going to finish there and open up for questions. And in fact, I might, if it's okay, invite Rena, if you're there, Rena, in case you
There
wanted
is,
to.
Jude, there is a
There are
question
some.
already for you.
Okay. I might first ask Rena if she's any thoughts, because she's been the DigComp, working on DigComp for many years before me. So you might have some view or question, and then we can move to questions in the chat. And
Mm-hmm.
if people want to raise their hands, I guess we can take questions that way as
Yes,
well.
of course, of course.
Yeah. Thanks, Jude. Very clear presentation. Ideas came through beautifully. Of course, the implementation will be the next step. I was actually a little bit surprised that you're talking about 8 levels. You know, they're going also for the level 7 and 8, because those are so, well, highly specialized, as we call them, and they would be in the area where you create new knowledge and where you create actually you solve problems that we don't even know, kind of wicked problems, if they can be solved. So how do you plan to be comprehensive in that area? That was, of course, the big question mark in my mind. And also the whole idea of comprehensiveness versus what was done in examples, because the examples was in a way like the easy part of the cake. Sorry, Jude. There we were only looking at the areas that are, or let's say themes that were new to digital competence, that didn't exist when the, let's say, the reference framework was done, and when previously we had been discussing about the sort of the extent of each competence, their definitions, the descriptors. And now if you want to be comprehensive, that's you will have to be like, some competencies have like what we we call modules. They are modular a little bit. They are like 4 different things within one competence, and the other one might be just one. So you will be with a huge number of things. Like, have you even counted, like made sort of scenarios, like, oh, will it be 10,000 or will it be, you know, 850, you know? So
Yeah, these are great questions. The first one, to be honest, with the number of proficiency levels, to be honest, it depends on what comes in, because this is the thing. There are things that we don't know. There could be some examples there where there are, in fact, some really creative people have come up with some ways to articulate learning outcomes for these top 2 levels. But if I'm honest, I would be surprised if that will be the case. So it could be the case that we simply don't have enough to go for the top 2 levels. And so we're relying on what's already been done in part. But we will, of course, also this is also partly an answer to your second really good question and really good comment about the DigComp 2.2 and the 200 59 examples, I think it is. So this will be an important piece of work that probably I should have mentioned, that in addition to receiving from many examples, we hope, a key part of the work will be bringing in all of those 259 examples into the mix and including them, so that we make sure that we don't miss anything. And we'll also bring in the content of DigComp SAT, because that's an excellent piece of work that has also been done. So we want to build on what's already been done. As for comprehensiveness, yes, indeed, it could be the case that we may need to, I guess, caveat what we mean by comprehensive, because like the whole world of digital competence it's like a moving target all the time. So we think we have a full coverage, and then another thing comes in, or
Yeah.
another creative application of a technology comes in, and we realize actually this is a very good example. So this work is going to be, indeed, it's going to be challenging but very exciting. I can't think, did you say anything else that I haven't commented on,
No,
Rina?
no.
No. And did
That's
you want to
good.
add
Yeah.
anything else?
We can discuss about it later, but I think this
Great.
could be called a new dimension. We
I
have
think so. I think
yeah,
so.
yeah,
Because we really want to build on and extend what's there and be clear. And I think
yeah,
you're quite right, Rena. Later in the process, one of the, this is even after the consultations have taken place, we will need to develop a clear way to communicate what's new, have a communication
yeah,
strategy, so there's no confusion about what these are for and how they relate to what's already been done. It's a really good
yeah,
point. Many
yeah.
thanks.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
Jude.
I can see some other questions coming in.
Yeah, there is one. I would start from Luis Fernandez, who asked, it seems that everything is valid, no matter the level of learning outcomes and the expression of the learning outcomes. So no need of being aligned to recommendations from CEDEFOP, for instance. Is this interpretation correct? And also he asked, are they limited to levels 1 to 6 as expected in the European Digital Skills Certificate? And if I may say, my understanding, Jude, is that this contribution phase, anything goes. In fact, I mean, there is no expectation that the learning outcomes should follow any given format, but it's a different story. The outcome of the whole process, where I guess there will be some alignment to standards or some logics. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So that's another really good question. So exactly as you said, Stefano, for now, anything goes. We are grateful to receive anything, because what we're hoping to achieve is a really good range of examples and what's possible in terms of specifying DigComp learning outcomes. Then, of course, we need to synthesize, and it could be the case that there simply isn't enough information for us to produce a robust synthesis view of learning outcomes at level 7 or 8. But we don't know that yet, because we'll have to see what comes in. And of course, you've seen, many of us have seen that there are many different ways to articulate and express learning outcomes. So this will be another important piece of the work. After we make the synthesis and identify the themes, we need to come up with a clear formula, in a way, a very clear way of structuring what a learning outcome statement that works well and is acceptable to our DigComp community and the users of DigComp. So that will be another step in the process as well. I hope that answers that question.
Okay, I think so. Then we move to Theodora Jatagana, who says, we have compiled data derived from self-assessments conducted by educators pertaining to their proficiency in digital skills. May we incorporate the results we obtained into our submission?
Yes, please. It would be very, very gratefully received, and it sounds like a really interesting project. Congratulations.
And
Thank you very much.
Maria Jesus Garcia de Martin asks, and I guess we're not considering going towards learning outputs. Is that so? I don't know exactly what it means, the difference between learning outcomes and learning outputs, but this is the question.
Yes, I think it boils down to our use of language, and whether in fact Maria Jesus means something different to what we're talking about. Maybe Maria Jesus, would you like to explain a bit more what you mean?
Thank you very much. I mean, I do this make the difference between learning goals, learning outcomes, and learning outputs. I guess when you talk about learning outcomes, you talk about results, not intentions, which should be the goals, but the results actually gained by, let's say, a student when he finishes a learning experience or initiative, whether the learning outcomes activities that support those desired results. I would definitely do that.
Okay, I didn't hear perfectly what you said, Maria Jesus. I think I heard enough to answer.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
The quality of sound, yes, it's not very good, but it's okay.
It's not fantastic. So the learning outcomes, if we go back to the definition, that is, again, there's many definitions, but we chose the one from the Council recommendation of the European Qualifications Framework because it seems to be a very solid one based on very good research foundation and the key elements of that definition. So as I said, we could call learning outcomes different things. It's it's a statement of what a person knows or can do, which is measurable. So that's the core of what we're trying to specify eventually with this new project. I hope that answers the question, Maria Jesus, but please, we can exchange. Of course, we look forward to exchange in the meantime if needs be. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Then, Jude, there is an interesting contribution by Mara again, who, that's interesting. She says, we have a very challenging work ahead at LICTA in Latvia. We have been invited by the Latvian Ministry of Education and Science to provide evaluation if 3 directions, high-level digital courses for universities. So we're talking about highly specialized topics, quantum technologies, language technologies, and high-performance computing are matching DigComp levels 7 and 8. Have already worked on the evaluation methodology together with university professors, and will start the actual evaluation in January, February 2024. We will be able to share the experience later. And Rina answered to Mara saying, there's a huge piece of work you're undertaking, great. I recently heard from Austrian colleagues who are working on linking their formal education coursework to national qualification framework. So some similarities exist. And let me add to this that I'm contacting the person at the University of Vienna who is working on this activity on the national qualification framework, because I'm hoping to invite him to a inspiring experience webinar to explain what they're doing, because this is really interesting and might be of interest to other people. But going back to Mara's comment, they are linking this notion of highly, let's say, highly specialized to a notion of a content also, which is highly special, because I mean, quantum technology, language technology, and high performance computing are, from my point of view, matters of professional skills or IT professional skills or whatever field they are in, engineering or informatics or whatever.
Exactly. Take the comment from Louise. Exactly. We discussed about this.
Okay.
No, just that because he just wrote it there. Because we discussed this also with the pilot of the digital skills certificate, this border, being between going to the higher levels like 7 and 8, and then you become the IT professionals, sort of that area of practice and competence. And there is the European standard of the e-competence framework for IT professionals, and those levels are fuzzy, and we've had these discussions quite a few times before where they go. And maybe this is actually an occasion to address a little bit this area also, Jude. Like I
think again, it's something that personally I would love to do, because I know from previous conversations with you and talking to others as well that this indeed is it's one of those fuzzy borders. But it would be dangerous to promise to do it. But I would love, if we can do it.
Keep an eye on it, maybe,
I think
while
it would be
analyzing.
to provide And again, I think the border will tend to remain fuzzy, but if we can,
Yeah,
I
and
think
it's okay.
naturally, exactly, as we get the especially if we get this very exciting work like what is happening in Austria, and was it Latvia this is happening as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think if we get a close look at those, it can help us then to begin to disentangle and define the border without being too rigid about it. I think indeed it would be really really helpful if we were able to do this.
Okay. Then there was a question about learning outcomes. Sabrina Grigolo, she said, for example, a learning outcome can be related to health as new dimension for patients and carers. And Rina says, Sabrina, but I mentioned it didn't mean a new application field, right? Like health, but dimension 5 of yeah, okay. The new dimension of the framework. We currently have 5 dimensions. That would be the idea would be adding another one. Since I don't see other questions, Jude, I would like myself. I have a curiosity, precisely because of what we are discussing now. I mean, this constant evolution of the digital world and the infinite areas of potential application of digital competence. There will never be an end, basically, to this learning outcomes creation process, etc. So I was wondering whether, while doing, okay, you have a project that has a deadline, and by that deadline, you have to come out with an output. But while doing this process, do you envisage, and should we also, let's say, reflect and contribute and discuss about how we could set up a permanent mechanism of submission and assessment and approval and whatever, some mechanisms that makes it possible to have a regular over time a mechanism that produces learning outcomes according to certain standards, and as proposal suggestions going towards an enrichment, because we were talking about this with Rina when we did the work on dimension 4 for DigComp 2.2. At some point, we felt that the process had produced so many interesting things, and it was in a way a pity that we at the end had to discard, because of course you couldn't put in the DigComp, in an updated DigComp framework, thousands of examples, but we managed in fact to add to the 250 examples which are in chapter 2 of DigComp 2.2. We have the annex 2, which is about the examples of artificial intelligence that we thought it would really be a pity to waste them, let's put it this way. And I have the feeling that something similar is going to happen in this process that you're starting now. And it would be nice to, while the process goes on, and so we see day by day what are the challenges, how you do it, and what might be the solution, and so on, to if we decide that this might be a side product, a byproduct of the process, the setting up of this kind of permanent mechanism for it might be useful. And in fact, this probably links into also the European Digital Skills Certificate operation, because there would be a governance mechanism that is more related to the certificate, but might be the same kind of mechanism that supports this process, ongoing continuous process.
Yeah, this is really, really good point as well. Because like the more I learn about DigComp and how people are using it, the more impressed I am. There's so many examples of really, really excellent work. And with this submissions process, we're going to learn more about more excellent initiatives. So indeed, it would be a pity to lose them. I would say that we should and could find a way to somehow preserve these examples and share them, but we need permission from all of the people submitting to enable that sharing before we do that. The other thing that's probably good to be aware of is that there is awareness at the commission level as well that coordination is needed and would be helpful. So there will be more, and this is even across director generals in the Commission. So there are even various groups in the Commission which have an interest in DigComp. So what's going to begin to happen is that there will be some coordination mechanism, and this is outside of the European Digital Skills Certificate anyway, that will enable more coordination. And I think that's a really good thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we can, I suppose, harness that and enable more coordination as well in our research work, which is this is what this is. I think the timing seems good for that. As for the digital skills certificate, right now we're in a wait and see mode. So we'll know, I'd say, early next year where that work is going and how it will be governed. And again, it will be, as you say, it will be really important to make that strong link between what's happening on DigComp and the EDSC, because of course DigComp is has much broader and varied applications than the EDSC, but nonetheless the link needs to be maintained. And as for having a permanent mechanism, I think one thing we'd strive to achieve with this piece of work is to come up with not only the content, which is the learning outcomes, but also a methodology. So just to take the comment, maybe I didn't understand it correctly, but there was somebody had put in about a link between DigComp and healthcare workers. So if we take that example, how I'm interpreting that is somebody could be interested in looking at the digital competence that healthcare workers need, but there could be other quite specialized digital skills that are specific to that group, in which case if that person wanted to develop a learning course or like a training course or an assessment, they could have a module whereby part of the module is DigComp competencies, and then there's another part of the module that may change over time as well, which could be, interpretation of MRI scans and, specialized hospital applications that is outside of DigComp, but nonetheless can sit beside it in a modular way. So I think we have a potential at this point in time as well to begin developing not just the content, but also a methodology to allow an updating to occur, which doesn't force or put pressure on DigComp to be all things to all people, all professions, all walks of life. So I think there has to be a balance struck there, or else I think we'd be in need to change the framework or update it somehow every few months, and clearly that's not feasible. So I think if we had developed a strategic process like that, it could also support all of us in our work as well. At least I hope so.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I agree. Good idea. Okay, there has been an interesting exchange between Mara and Luis about this issue of the level 7-8. And yes, but it's going to be interesting to hear the result of that.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to exchange with me and the team at the JRC, please do drop me an email at the DigComp email address. I'd love to hear from you.
And let me take the opportunity, and if anyone has some interesting experience which goes on these aspects and they want to present it and discuss it with other members of the community of practice, just contact me. And as you know, we have this monthly webinars, inspiring experiences in the use of DigComp, and we are preparing the calendar for next year. So if you have some interesting experience, just contact me and we can talk about it and put you in the calendar. So it's another opportunity maybe to go a little bit deeper in some explain how certain results were achieved and so on. And there might be other people interested to hear them. Okay, so no other questions are coming in. We're almost close to the 1 hour of our webinar. Anyone has a last minute question to ask? If not, let's say that as promised, I will just give me one day to do it, and I will share the recording of this webinar and this presentation in a folder, and I will send the link through all your emails that you left at the registration moment. So you will have the direct opportunity to look at them. And of course, you're welcome to register if you're not there already to the DigComp community of practice. And okay, there is a last.
We have one question there,
Yes.
Stefano.
Will DigComp be interested in looking at the digital competence of professionals working in government parastatals? Why not, I would say, but
Yes, again, I think this could be an example of the, I mean, there could be skills, for example, in interoperability skills, depending on the particular role of the government professional, that would not be under the remit of DigComp, because we always need to go back to the fact that it's a competence framework for citizens. So again, there could be a way to, there will be a way to make DigComp learning outcomes relevant to this group of people. But again, it could necessitate the identification of additional competences that are outside of DigComp and combine those two things in the same way I talked about the health example, if that makes sense.
in fact, since I see him among the participants, my friend Roberto Legasegi from Icanos, from the Basque countries, they might be an interesting, inspiring experience to tell, because they have worked a lot on this issue of how to integrate keep inside the DigComp framework also specialist competencies, and they developed this notion of sub-competencies, and they did it. So it might be an interesting experience to tell and to share with other members. So maybe this might be one of the first webinars in the next year. Okay, so it's 11 o'clock, and Jude, if you want to just say last word, or
No, just to say a big thank you for everybody being here. Thanks to All Digital. Many thanks, Stefano. You've been great as usual, and thanks to Rena as well, and everybody for being here. And I wish you all a lovely day.
And Merry Christmas, I would say at this stage.
Yes,
of course,
yes,
yes. We look forward to the Christmas break.
Very good. Bye, everybody. Good seeing you all. Bye.
Okay.
Merry
Bye-bye.
Christmas. Bye-bye.